Good morning, Year 3. It's Tuesday the 2nd of February and I'm going to talk you through your maths lesson. But before we begin our maths lesson, I thought we'd play a quick game. I'm not sure how it's going to work, as obviously I can't see you, but I thought we'd play Mrs. Barnes Says, just to get you moving a little bit and engaged and ready to begin the lesson. So I'm going to say some actions like you would for Simon Says, and you're going to copy them. So if I said Mrs. Barnes says touch your head, you would have to pat your head. And then I might say Mrs. Barnes says pat your shoulders. Mrs. Barnes says touch your nose, touch your cheeks. And then you be out because I didn't say Mrs. Barnes says. So I'm going to trust that if you do something you shouldn't, so if I say Mrs. Barnes says touch your cheeks, you would touch them. But if I say touch your cheeks, and you touch them, then you would be out, okay? So we're going to see if you can go right through to the end of the game. And Mrs. Lewis will be watching the children who are in score to see if they can follow the instructions. So let's start with Mrs. Barnes says, touch your nose. Mrs. Barnes says, touch your lips. Mrs. Barnes says, touch your head. Mrs. Barnes says, touch your shoulders. Mrs. Barnes says, touch your eyes. Mrs. Barnes says, touch your head. Mrs. Barnes says, touch your shoulders. Mrs. Barnes says, pat your head. Mrs. Barnes says, catch your hands. Touch your nose. Did I get anyone out? Okay, let's carry on those children who are still in it. Mrs. Barnes says, stand up. Mrs. Barnes says, run on the spot. Mrs. Barnes says, sit back down. Mrs. Barnes says, stand up. Mrs. Barnes says, sit down. Mrs. Barnes says, stand up, sit down. Did I get anyone out that time? Maybe not. Who's still in it? Let's see. Okay. Mrs. Barnes says, clap. Mrs. Barnes says, put a funny face. Mrs. Barnes says, touch your eyes. Mrs. Barnes says, pat your head. Mrs. Barnes says, do some dance moves. Mrs. Barnes says, stand up. Mrs. Barnes says, jump on the spot. Mrs. Barnes says, sit back down. Mrs. Barnes says, pat your head. Mrs. Barnes says, touch your shoulders. Mrs. Barnes says, pat your head, touch your shoulders. Did I get anyone out that time? Hopefully you're a little bit more warmed up now for the maths lesson. And I'm hoping lots of you are still in the game. And we'll have a go at possibly playing that on one of our Zoom chats. And you can have a go at being the person who gives out the instructions. Okay, let's begin our maths lesson. So the work for today is to use column subtraction for two 3-digit numbers when exchanging is required in the tens column. So we're moving on today to subtraction. So our subtraction sign, we are taking away, we are finding the difference, we are subtracting. So I just want you to write today's short date and Walt into your books and then have a think about what we've already learnt about subtraction this year and maybe what you learnt last year when you were in year 2. Okay, so we have learnt subtraction already this year. We learnt how to mentally subtract before Christmas. So we were learning to subtract 3-digit numbers using our heads. We learnt lots of different strategies and we were working it out mentally. And we can mentally subtract still. So for instance, if we had the question 200 subtract 200, I would want you to be able to do that in your heads. I think all of you can answer that calculation. So 200, take away 200 is going to leave you with nothing. So we can all work that one out. But sometimes the calculations can be quite tricky. So when we've got exchanging involved, we might need to have a more formal method. And that's what we're going to learn today. So we can still use our brains. We can still mentally subtract when we need to, but sometimes we will need a more formal method. Obviously, we're still going to use our brains in the formal method, but we are going to have to record it in some way rather than it all being worked out mentally. So some key language that we are going to be using in today's lesson, but also throughout this unit of subtraction. So we're going to be using the language of ones, which you're all very used to anyway. So our ones in these numbers are 4 and 3. So those are our ones digit. We're also going to be using tens, which again, we're very used to. So our tens here are 2. So I've got 2 tens in the number 324, and I've got 1 10 in the number 113. So those are our tens digits. We're also going to be using the term hundreds. So our hundreds in this number is 3. We've got 300. And our hundreds in this number is 1. We've got 100. We're also going to be using the term subtract. So you might also know that as take away. We are subtracting because we are trying to find the difference. So our subtract symbol is here. So that's our subtract symbol. We're also going to be using the term exchange, and I'll model that throughout this lesson. Some new vocabulary for today is minuend and subtrahend. So I don't know if you can say that with me. So after 3, we'll say minuend. 1, 2, 3, minuend. Now the minuend is your start number. It's your whole. It's what you've got. Okay, so our minuend here is 324. That's what I'm starting with. Then we've got our subtrahend. So after 3, we'll say that together. 1, 2, 3, subtrahend. Now our subtrahend is the part that we are subtracting. So our subtrahend here is 113. And then we are left with the difference. So we are left with the difference. So our minuend is our start number. It's what we've got. We're subtracting our subtrahend, one of our parts, and then what we're left with is the difference. So we're going to try and use that language in today's lesson. I might need reminding as well, okay? It's new language for me as well. So we're all going to try and use this vocabulary to help us reason and explain when we're subtracting. So place value grid, this really helps us. We've been using this a lot with addition. So we're still going to use it with subtraction, but we're using it slightly differently. So this is our first calculation, and it's a nice, easy one to start with. So we have got our minuend, 654, and we are subtracting our subtrahend, 241, and I'm trying to find the difference. What am I left with? So I've set up my calculation the same as I did with my addition calculation. So I'm starting with my minuend. That's important. We need to start with our greatest number here. With addition, we could start with either, but with subtraction, we start with our greatest number. And then I write my second number, my subtrahend underneath, and I'm being really careful to line up my ones with my ones, my tens with my tens, and my hundreds with my hundreds. So I've got 654, and I've modelled that here. 6 hundreds, 5 tens, and 4 ones. And I'm subtracting 241. So I'm going to start by subtracting my ones, just like I did with addition. So 4 ones, and I'm going to subtract 1 1. So I'm taking it away because I'm subtracting it. I want to find out what I've got left. So I'm actually removing that 1. So I'm going to pop it over here, just out of the way. I could delete it. We don't need it anymore. It's gone. Okay, we're taking it away. So I had 4 ones. I've taken away 1 1. I'm left with 3 ones. Okay, let's go on to our tens next. So I've got 5 tens. I'm subtracting 4 tens. And I want to know what I'm going to be left with, the difference. So let's subtract, let's take away those 4 tens. 10, 20, 30, 40. So how many tens am I left with? I'm left with 1 10. Now I'm going to subtract my hundreds. I've got 600, I'm subtracting 200. So I'm going to subtract 100, 200. How many hundreds have I got left? I've got 400 left. So my minuend was 654. I subtracted my subtrahend, which was 241. And the difference, what I'm left with, is 413. Okay, it's going to get a little bit more tricky than that, but that was just to show you how we line up our calculation and what we need to do, okay? So this time it's a little bit more tricky, but I'm sure you can do it. Have that growth mindset. So 654 is my minuend. That's what I've got, and I've modelled that here. I'm subtracting my subtrahend, which is 246. And Colin very kindly has reminded us that we need to line up the ones with the ones. Check, I've done that. We line up the tens with the tens. Yeah. And we line up the hundreds with the hundreds. So we've already done that, Colin. We're brilliant at that now. So the first step is to subtract my ones. So I've got 4 ones and I need to subtract 6 ones. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, haven't got enough ones there. Can I just swap them round? Can I just do 6 subtract 4 instead? I hope you're screaming at your screen saying, no, Mrs. Barnes, you can't just swap them round. I need to do something here. What do I need to do? Hopefully you're telling me that I need to exchange. So that's that vocabulary that I introduced on that slide previously. Okay, so that word exchange here, that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be exchanging. So I haven't got enough ones at the moment. So I need to just move my place value around a little bit so that I have created more ones. So I can do that by exchanging 110 for 10 ones. I know, because I've got good place value knowledge, that 110 is the same as 10 ones. So I'm going to put 10 ones in here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I've exchanged that 110. I'm actually pointing to my screen. You can't see that. I'm not sure why I'm pointing to my screen, year 3, but I am. So this 10 here, this 110, I've exchanged that 110 for 10 ones. So I need to get rid of that 110 because I've exchanged it for 10 ones. Okay, so I've still got 110, but I've just represented it as 10 ones now. So I need to show that over here. So I exchanged 110. So I've now got 4 tens, and I exchanged that 110 for 10 ones. So I've now got 14 ones. Okay, can I now work out the calculation? 14 subtract 6, can I do that? Hopefully you're saying yes. So let's subtract 6 ones. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, oh, don't want to do that. We don't want to take the place value grid. 5, 6. Now, hopefully, because you know your number facts, you can work out 14 subtract 6. So how many have I got left? So the answer is 8. So let's have a look at our tens. 4 tens, 40, subtract 3 tens, 30. So I'm going to subtract 10, 20, 30. How many tens am I left with? 1. Now I'm going to subtract my hundreds. 600, subtract 200s. 100, 200. How many hundreds am I left with? 400. So my minuend was 654. I subtracted my subtrahend, which was 236. And the difference, what I'm left with, is 418. And I had to exchange in this calculation. I had to exchange 110 for 10 ones so that I was able to subtract my ones. So that's what we had to do in this example. Okay, let's have a look at this one. So 654, again, that's my minuend. This time I'm subtracting my subtrahend, 246. So we've got a different subtrahend this time. So last time we had 236. This time we've got 246. So let's have a go at this calculation. 4 subtract 6. We can't do that. We know we can't do that from the last calculation. So what did we have to do? Who can remember what we had to do? we need to exchange. So we're going to exchange 1 10 for how many ones? 10 ones. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I've got exactly the same number. I've still got 654, but I've just represented one of those 10s as 10 ones instead. So it's the same minuend, the same number, but I've exchanged 1 10 for 10 ones. So I'm going to show that here. I've no longer got 5 10s, I've got 4 10s because I exchanged 1 10 for 10 ones. So I now have 14 ones. 14 subtract 6. We did this in the last calculation, so hopefully you've remembered that if we take away, subtract 6 from 14, then we are left with 8. Then we're going to subtract our 10s. 4 10s subtract 4 10s, so 10, 20, 30, 40. How many 10s am I left with? 0 10s. And that's fine, we can have 0 10s. So I put a 0 in there as my placeholder, 0 10s, and then 600 subtract 200. 100, 200, so I'm left with 400. So the answer to 654 subtract 246 is 408. Okay, let's have a go at a different calculation. I've got a different minuend this time. I've got 841 and I'm subtracting 525. So we've lined up our digits correctly. We're ready to go. We're going to start by subtracting our ones. 1 subtract 5. I'm not able to do that at the moment, am I? So what do I need to do? I only have 1 1. So I need to exchange 1 10 for 10 ones. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So how many ones do I now have? I have 11 ones, and I'm going to show that over here. So I exchanged 1 10, so I've now got 3 10s left, for 10 ones, so I now have 11 ones. Now I can work out my subtraction. So 11 subtract 5, so hopefully you're using your number facts here to work out that calculation. I'm also going to show you with the place value counters. How many am I left with? I'm left with 6 ones. Now I'm going to subtract my 10s. 3 10s subtract 2 10s. I can do that. 1 10, 2 10s. How many 10s am I left with? 1 10. 10. Now I'm going to subtract my hundreds. 800 subtract 500, 100, 200, 300, 400, 500. So how many hundreds am I left with? I'm left with 3 hundreds. So my answer to the calculation, 841 subtract 525 equals 316. Okay, let's have a go at another one. So this time I haven't set out my place value. So I want us to work through all the steps together. So my minuend is 762. My subtrahend, what I'm subtracting, is 458. And I'm trying to work out the difference. So what's the first step going to be? I'm going to write my place value, my 100, 10s and 1s. What's my second step? Hopefully you said that you need to write your minuend, 762. My next step, to subtract my subtrahend, 458. And I need to be really careful here, don't I, that I line up my digits correctly. 1s underneath the 1s, 10s underneath the 10s, hundreds underneath the hundreds. Now the next step, to show the equal sign, and we're going to work out the difference. So where do we start? We start with our ones. So 2 subtract 8. I can't do that. I've only got 2 ones. I can't subtract 8 ones from 2 ones. So I'm going to have to exchange here. So I'm going to use Coco's STEM sentence to help me. I only have 2 ones, so I need to exchange 1 10 for 10 ones. So I'm going to exchange that 1 10 for 10 ones. So 3 ones, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I've exchanged 1 10 for 10 ones, and I now have 12 ones, and I'm going to show that here. So I exchanged 1 10 for 10 ones, so I've now got 12 ones. So what's 12 subtract 8? Hopefully you can use your number facts, and we know that 12 subtract 8 equals 4. Okay, I'm not actually going to model it here because I think we can do this just using our number facts. So let's have a look at the tens. 5 tens subtract 5 tens. I can do that. I can subtract 5 tens and it will leave me with 0 tens. Let's have a look at the hundreds. 7 subtract 4. 700 subtract 400. It's going to leave me with 300. So the difference, what I'm left with, was 304. Okay, Colin's had a go. I wonder if he's right or not. Let's have a look, shall we? Colin thinks that he has worked out the calculation correctly. Can you help him? So you might want to pause the video, just have a look at Colin's calculation. Has he worked it out correctly? And if he hasn't, can you identify what his mistake was? What does he need help with? Hopefully you've realised that Colin has not worked this out correctly. What has he done incorrectly? What's wrong? Hopefully you've spotted that his ones isn't correct. So he's got his minuend and he's got his subtrahend and he thinks he's worked out the difference, but he hasn't worked it out correctly because 3 ones subtract 7 ones isn't 4 ones. What's Colin done there? And that's what I was going to do at the start, wasn't it? I think Colin has just moved the digits around. He knows that you can't subtract 7 from 3. So he just thinks, well, I'll just move the digits around and do 7 subtract 3 instead. But we know that you can't do that. What do you need to do? You need to exchange. So let's show Colin the correct way to work this out. So 3 subtract 7. Well, we can't do that at the moment. We need to exchange. So we're going to exchange 1 10, which would leave me with 4 tens, because I'm going to exchange 1 10 for 10 ones. So instead of having 3 ones, I've now got 13 ones. 13 subtract 7 isn't 4. What's 13 subtract 7? Hopefully you're telling me that it's 6. And then we're going to move on to our tens. 4 tens subtract 2 tens. Is that 3 tens? No. 4 tens subtract 2 tens equals 2 tens, 20. And then let's look at our hundreds. 300 subtract 100 is 200. So Colin managed to work out the hundreds correctly, but he didn't quite understand about exchanging. So hopefully we've helped Colin by showing him that if you don't have enough ones in the minuend, you need to exchange 1 10 for 10 ones. Okay, are you ready to have a go? Hopefully you are. So I've put some helpful tips at the side here. A reminder of lining up the digits and how important that is. Also a reminder that if the ones digit in the minuend is less than the ones digit in the subtrahend, which it was in the last example with Colin, wasn't it? And all of the examples that we looked at before that, you need to exchange 1 10 for 10 ones. So always have a look. Is my ones digit in the minuend less than the ones digit in the subtrahend? And if it is, then you'll need to exchange. And then I've also put the STEM sentence on the board to help you. So hopefully you can say this when you're working out your calculations. So have a go at the 4 on the board, pause the video. When you've finished, unpause it and we will go through the answers. Okay, so hopefully you've had a go at those 4 questions, and we're just going to quickly run through the answers together so that you can mark your own work. So hopefully, fingers crossed, you have set out your calculations just like I have on the board with your 100 tens and ones and all your digits lined up correctly. So let's have a go at the first question. 4 subtract 7. My ones digit in my minuend is less than the ones digit in my subtrahend, so I'm going to have to exchange. So I'm going to exchange 1 10, so I've got 1 10 less, for 10 ones. So I've now got 14 ones. 14 subtract 7 is 7. 4 10s subtract 2 10s is 20, 2 10s. 700 subtract 300 is 400. So the difference in the first calculation is 427. Okay, let's have a look at the second calculation. 4 ones again, subtract 7. Well, we know we can't do that from the first calculation, so we can use that to help us. So I'm going to have to exchange. So I'm going to exchange 1 10 for 10 ones. So I've now got 14 ones. 14 subtract 7 equals 7. 4 10s subtract 1 10, 40 subtract 10 equals 30, and 700 subtract 300 equals 400. So we've got 437. Let's have a go at the next one. 840 subtract 127. So let's start with our ones. 0 subtract 7. Hopefully you've realised that we can't do that at the moment. Our minuend 1 is less than our subtrahend 1. So I'm going to have to exchange. So I'm going to exchange 1 10 for 10 ones. So I've now got 10 subtract 7, which I can do, and gives me the answer of 3. I've got 3 10s subtract 2 10s. 30 subtract 20 equals 10. And then my hundreds, 800 subtract 100, which equals 700. I'm now going to move on to the last calculation. So 2 subtract 9, we need to exchange again. So this is going to become 2 10s and 12 ones. 12 subtract 9 gives me the answer of 3. I'm left with 3. 2 10s subtract 2 10s leaves me with 0 10s. And 900 subtract 400 leaves me with 500. So hopefully you got those questions correct. If you didn't, don't worry. There are some extra questions you can have a go at on your Class Dojo sheet. So today you have got a go deep and go deeper, but if you do need some more practice, then have a go at those extra do it questions. That's absolutely fine. So your go deep today, Colin has made a mistake. So you just need to have a look at the calculation and try and identify what mistake he has made. So have a go at working it out and then try and unpick what his misconception is. I would love it if you could try and use that language. So I'm looking for minuend, subtrahend, subtraction, difference, exchange. So try and use that key vocabulary in your explanation. And then you'll go deeper, always, sometimes, never. A written method is needed to subtract 2 3-digit numbers. Explain. Now, at the start of the video, I did give you a little clue that might help you answer this question. I gave you an example of a subtraction involving 3-digit numbers, where I said that you could work it out mentally and you wouldn't need a written method. So that might help you with your go deeper question today. So have a go. We'll look forward to seeing your work later. And if you've got any questions, then just send us a message. Have a lovely day. Bye.